Welcome to Uncomfortable, conversations about culture and Christianity. My name is Eric, and today I'm joined by Jess.
Hello, world.
And Alex.
Happy to be here.
Oh, good. I'm glad you're happy to be here. I'm happy to be here. I'm going to speak for Jess. Oh, okay, never mind. She spoke for herself. She's happy to be here. I'm assuming Austin's happy to be here. He's real nonchalant right now.
Oh, he's smiling. He's
Legs,
happy.
Feet on the desk. He's just like, we've been through, a lot of podcasting today, so he's getting a little tired.
He looks relaxed though.
But he's got his he's got his sparkling water and some M&Ms over there, so everything's good.
I mean, it's been a good week for him. His followership, I know, has been increasing on Instagram.
Yeah, follow Woodvice.
Woodvice at Woodvice.
Be careful,
That's
though.
WOODVISE, all one word on Instagram and YouTube. Subscribe.
Yeah, first YouTube video out there.
Yeah,
so.
if you want to really know Austin, who he is, this is a great time to do that.
Hopefully we'll have a collaboration one day if he builds us a nicer table.
A new podcast
My
table,
goal is to have him sitting in that
right
chair.
there. Someday we can dream. We can hope.
He's on
Not even
the
a goal,
trajectory.
it's a dream.
Doing voicovers. We're
Okay,
almost
he's done.
there.
He's not smiling anymore. Let's go.
Now he says you've talked about us too much.
We need to
Talked about me
listen to
too much.
another person.
You got a voicemail?
We have a voicemail.
Okay.
Here it is.
Are you sure? I don't hear it.
I don't know what happened.
There might be a voicemail.
We tested this earlier.
Sometimes you have I bet Austin over there got mad about us talking about him so much that he
Just
muted
pushed
it.
a button. Try it
Here
again.
we go.
He did push a button. Did that work?
Hey, CCC podcast. Question. Toilet paper, over or under? What is your preferred?
Oh, okay. That threw me off for a second. I was like, how you wipe? Or like, it's the position
think about
of.
it too.
I was like, wait, is she asking, do you wipe over or under? And I didn't.
I see.
I didn't know
Do you
one of
pull
those were a
from
possibility.
The top or the bottom.
I'm just mostly
Front or
upset
behind?
at Austin
Just
for
toilet
trying to
paper.
sabotage the podcast after we just gave him an entire infomercial. But back
That's
to the
true.
question at hand.
Sorry.
Over 100%.
Yeah, if you hang it under, it means that you don't
What's
care
wrong
about
with you?
anything. You don't care about balance in the world. You don't care about
Anyone's
peace.
OCD.
Like you're just a agent of chaos. If you're just like, slap that one on there, whatever. Who cares?
I am absolutely that person. I don't care.
Oh, no.
I don't look at which
Stop.
direction.
Stop it
It
right
rolls
now.
the same
No, I
both
don't
ways.
think- I don't think you're
100%.
just-
I
You're telling
literally
me.
grabbed the roll
Stop
of toilet
it.
paper. I grabbed the spring thing, that's in there. And I just never once in my entire life have I ever looked at which direction. If you go to my house right now, I would guess there's how many toilets? 4 toilets in my house. Chances are it's 50-50.
Wow, bragging much? Is that by the?
What are the by the
how many
pool?
toilets are by the pool?
There
Alex,
are no toilets by
Aaron
the
must
pool.
really love you.
I'm just feeling hurt now because I only
I'm
have
shook.
2 toilets.
I have 3, and
Oh
Yeah.
no! Wow. Okay.
I don't want to go any farther.
But both of my 2 toilets, it's over. Okay.
Same.
I
All my
honestly
3.
never
This is
one
weird.
time in my entire life.
I honestly am having a hard time believing you.
Yeah.
Are you seriously trying?
I'm 100%
You're just
serious.
You're whipping.
Whipping.
You're
What?
just whipping a roll of toilet paper out from under your sink, and you don't even look.
Not once. And I have no no plans to start. Like, I don't
When
believe
you
that
get
was a
home
question.
tonight, will you send
That was
Eric
the
and I
question.
pictures of every toilet roll?
I
Because I
will.
want to see for real.
I will. Like,
This is insane
I don't
to me.
because I'm working on my
This
envy
is
over
how
here.
a 10-second voicemail just
Really.
revealed a
us-
lot about me, apparently.
Yeah.
Like, I really am shocked that this is a thing.
it is 100% a thing.
Your wife doesn't get annoyed when you do it the wrong way?
I don't think she knows.
What?
I don't believe this.
I know.
There
This
can't
is
be
why-
2 of you
Unless
in one
she's
house.
going,
That's like 2 unicorns
Unless
living
this is
together
my thing.
what
under
could
one
be happening
roof.
here is there could be some sort of codependency in our marriage where she just goes in behind me and fixes it every time, and I have no clue. But honestly, never one time
this
in
is
my
the
entire
thing.
life have I ever noticed which direction it's coming from.
I don't know. I feel like this is a character you're putting on. I don't know.
I do too.
This isn't the real
like,
Alex. He's playing a character for
this is an
entertainment
age-old debate.
purposes.
No, I don't even want to ask my next question.
Well, too late. Now we all are
Wait,
curious.
what did you guys?
When you
what
run
did
out
you
of
guys
that
say?
toilet paper,
Yeah.
do you leave that roll just hanging on the roll, or do you change
Absolutely
it?
not.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
always have the backup.
Okay.
You've always got
Okay.
the backup. That's in the bathroom. Sometimes you gotta get up and move a little bit to grab the backup.
heart's
but-
Oh, the old I'm out of toilet paper waddle with
Yeah.
your ankles are tied together. And
the classic
He's laughing because he knows.
waddle. Now that one I've done. Okay, but the
squat
toilet
waddle.
paper thing, never.
because you don't want to
Please.
stand straight up because then that's a messy situation.
That's the
Please
worst.
tell us who's right. Eric
the
and
worst.
Jess or Alex?
So wait, you both do it differently?
No.
No,
we do it the right way.
We do it the right
Which
way.
is what?
Over.
Over.
The toilet paper comes
The
over
roll
so you can
comes
reach
like
out
this.
and grab it.
You don't flip it and you pull it like this.
Yeah,
Like
she's
pull
doing
it
a lot of
under.
motions right now that people
I
listening
definitely
can't
have opinions about
See?
crinkle or fold,
a
or if you
whole nother
wipe front to
thing.
back to front. Like I'm all in on those debates.
Okay.
No,
Which
this is
way?
this is the foundational.
Wait,
Oh my gosh.
crinkle or fold?
Don't.
Are those like French fries?
No, like your toilet paper. Do you just
Waffle.
grab it and fold it into a ball,
waffle your
or do
toilet
you, fold
Wedge.
it nicely?
We're just talking about how you're getting it.
Yeah.
I hate
Over,
it.
under, and you don't care, which is bizarre.
All right, we have to stop. This
For
is too
as
much. I'm too upset.
Organized and well put together as you are, I am shocked.
I'm pretty upset that I wasn't able to ask. I'm going to ask my wife, and we'll find out if there's codependency happening in our
Yeah.
marriage around this, or maybe our next guest can help.
I
me.
need to talk to a counselor. I know that much
Well,
about this situation,
good thing
but
I'm
we're in
here.
luck. We are talking about codependency with Dianne Amstutz, a CityCare counselor. She's going to be joining us for this conversation. I think it was really enlightening for me. It was good, and I think people should stay tuned for that. That's up next. All right, today on this episode, we are joined by Dianne Amstutz. Am I saying that right?
That's correct.
Okay, I got it. I always want to make sure that we don't butcher names around here. You are a CityCare counselor, and you're joining us today because we're going to be talking about codependency. And I think it's always great when we can have someone who can speak into these topics from an outsider's perspective and a professional's perspective, someone who's dealing with this on the ground. If you don't mind, like, introduce yourself a little bit to our listeners, what you do at CityCare, maybe where you specialize in counseling, and a little bit about yourself as well.
Sure. I'm one of the counselors at CityCare. I'm also on the leadership team and became the director of supervision over there. So I get to work with the interns and provisionals that are coming along and help mentor them. Past experiences, I have certifications in trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. So I am a trauma therapist, which comes in handy for the topic that we're talking about today. In Michigan, I was the director of a child abuse council, children's advocacy center. I've had just the opportunity to work with a lot of different demographics of abuse, domestic violence, and then just anxiety, depression, things that come up with people. So God has just blessed me with a lot of opportunities in this field, and glad to be with you today.
Awesome.
Fun fact about Diane and I, we are actually next door neighbors at
We
CityCare.
are.
So for the past year and a half, we wave at each other between appointments.
Probably
I love
good.
being by Jessica.
Yeah.
Good. It's between appointments. Probably be a little awkward.
Yeah, it would be.
Just
That's kind of when we all see each other.
That's right.
So help us understand the term codependency to someone, as the armchair therapist here. I'm going to say, you're good, I'm good. That's kind of my rudimentary understanding of codependency. Mm-hmm. It's where my emotional state is going to match yours no matter what. And that's kind of, if you're mad, I'm mad. If you're happy, I'm happy. That sort of thing. Am I close? Or how would you explain it to someone who's trying to understand it better?
Yeah, no, the definition of codependency is a complex definition. We try to make it as simple as we can, but it's really pretty complex. It started well, not to give you a boring history lesson here, but in 1935, that's when Alcoholics Anonymous started. And we started learning about addicts and addiction and alcoholism and, ways to help them. So the obvious question was next, well, what about the people that live with alcoholics and addicts, difficult people in their lives? What happens to them? How do they cope? How do they make it? And so research began, and we started finding out that there was a definite pattern of coping skills and that went with that, and behaviors. And so in studying those behaviors, we found out that codependents try to help the person in their life that is an addict. Maybe they have mental health issues they're not caring for. Maybe they're emotionally or physically abusive, such in situations like domestic violence. So the codependent wants to run in and fix that person in their life. I call it, a good acronym for it is FORD, Fixer Repair Daily. I have nothing against Fords. I'm from Michigan, but
it's better than what I thought Ford stood for. I was always told it was found on road dead.
That's the other one. That's the other one. Yeah.
Okay, repeat it again, because now we're going to think of that. Fix or repair
Fix
daily.
or repair daily. Yeah, I heard that a lot growing up. My dad was an Oldsmobile guy, and my grandfather was a Ford guy. So, but if you think of it in those terms, these people are not asking to be helped.
Yeah.
They're not seeking that out. They're not looking to heal their mental illness. They're not trying to get help for addiction. But yet the codependent will run in there every day trying to make that impossible thing happen for that other person. They're taking on the responsibility of the other person.
So at CCC, I know like one of the groups or that's really been kind of growing and blowing up more and more is a couple codependency groups. And so for me, like an awareness of that has just, been opened up more and more. But what drives this? If somebody's listening or like, they're like, I don't know if I've got this. Like, what drives codependency in somebody's life?
Sure. A lot of it, research tells us that it's often developed when you're a young child. Because if you're growing up in a home with a lot of dysfunction or toxic people in the house, you're going to find ways to protect yourself. So it's born a lot out of a sense of trying to protect yourself or, persevere. So as children, we don't have the executive functioning skills of adults. So we find ways to protect ourselves that don't always serve us as well once we become adults. We begin caretaking. Children often begin to caretake for the alcoholic in the home, the alcoholic parent. So you learn that young, and then you bring that into adulthood. Well, then now you're trying to protect your spouse, and you're trying to make everything okay in the home when it's not okay in the home.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And I think that that's why it's hard to identify as we become adults. And so sometimes if someone says like, well, you're codependent, that feels shocking because it's born in either chaos or trauma, or I would even say like a survival skill. So it feels very normal to do it because for us, it's like, especially the fix or repair daily, it's like, this is part of my routine. This is just part of how I interact and have relationships with people.
It's your normal.
Right. It's your normal.
Yeah.
I want to also, before we get too deep into it, give the definition that you sent me because I think it's really great because one of your references is Melody Beatty.
Yes.
Am I saying that right?
Yep.
And the definition of codependency, like maybe a more clinical term to kind of just help us to understand is a codependent person is a person who has allowed another person's behavior to affect him or her and who is obsessed with controlling that person's behavior. Mm-hmm. And I think we say like obsessed, but we don't realize that. Maybe that feels a little like harsh if we're like just realizing that maybe this is an issue for us.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily always a bad thing, but it's like we're kind of fixated on that.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're in a sense addicted to the chaos. Mm-hmm. We don't know that, but we are addicted to the chaos. It's just become a part of our normal, especially if that's the way you grew up. And so, so you're constantly finding the chaos to fix it. And so it used to be termed co-addict. Mm-hmm. I don't know why they changed it, but it probably sounds a little bit nicer to say codependent.
So when you say they're looking for the chaos, are they contributing to the chaos at all? Are they helping initiate the drama, or are they just trying to fuel the fire, find it, and kind of fuel it?
I think that's a great question because we think we're putting out the chaos. We think that we're helping, and that's the intention. I believe that's the heart of it, that codependents are doing it to help and to fix the situation. But in a lot of cases, they're enabling the addict's behavior because they're doing things for the addict or the toxic person in their home that they should be doing for themselves. And so if we're constantly in there rescuing them from the consequences of their behaviors, then they continue to lean on the codependent, and the codependent continues to aid in their ability to continue the behavior.
I think where it gets really difficult as a Christian, somebody from a Christian worldview, is I think of, people in my life that, are codependent, and most of them are Christian because I hang out with a lot, though that's not it. But as a Christian, our life is, scripture there's nothing better than for a man to lay down his life for another person. And we see Jesus as a self-sacrificing person that in scripture, it's like we wash people's feet. We're humble. We're servants. That's what it means to be a follower of Jesus, is to be somebody that lays down our own life and sacrifices those things for others, for the benefit of others. And so I think to a lot of people, it's like, this is what Jesus invited me to do. Jesus modeled this, and to be a Christian means that I'm supposed to do that. And you're selfish because you don't do that. In those conversations, if I try to identify it, it's like, it doesn't want to be, no, that's not a problem. Like, that's actually, I'm more holy in some ways. And sometimes our holiness or our closeness to Jesus can get easily tied here. And so I do think most of it is out of a good surrendered heart, wanting to be more like Jesus and to give up and sacrifice. And so that's where it becomes, I think, complicated, especially in a Christian worldview, for somebody to try to figure out, am I codependent, and is this helping somebody? Is this hurting somebody? So how do we, as Christians, start to identify that and start to put lines in the sand of, okay, this is being like Jesus, or this is actually and hurting somebody?
Yeah. And I'm sure Jessica's seeing this in her practice too, but this is one of the big ones for me that I wrestle with people, because it's like, but I'm doing this out of love. I'm doing this out of sacrifice for this person that I love, and I want to help. I want to be Jesus to them. And yes, we want to be Jesus to people who are in need and who are need our help. But are we helping? Are we being Jesus if we're enabling those behaviors and we're not giving them what they really need, which is directing them to get help for themselves, right? To deal with these issues themselves. If we're taking them on for this person, if we're carrying all of that for them, all the emotion, and I'll say too, all of the consequences of their behaviors, are we helping them? Is that really being Jesus? Or is it more if we, being Jesus to them, if we say, look, this is an area in your life, it's affecting our family, it's affecting you, and you need bigger help. You need professional help. You need someone in your life that can help direct you. To me, that's being Jesus. Obviously, if we see someone in need that genuinely needs our help, yeah, I think we're called, right, to sacrifice and be there for those people. But in a codependent relationship like that, it's really intended, like you said, to be helpful and to be Jesus. But in reality and where the rubber meets the road, we're just enabling behavior.
One of the things that I think when we plan episodes like this and have someone like yourself on, it's maybe it's just me, but I'm like, oh, am I going to get diagnosed today? Like that's like I have a little bit of a fear, coming into this.
I'm not on the clock for that.
Okay.
That hat is not on.
but I do think with the era of TikTok that we see where people are scrolling and self-diagnosing and someone's on there saying, do you only like green M&Ms? You're probably codependent, stuff like that. And you're going, wait, is that me? And you're drawing those parallels. How do we identify that? Is it best to seek out a counselor? Are there some warning signs that we could look at and go, oh, okay, yeah, this probably maybe is an issue for me and I should seek out some help?
Yeah. I love green M&Ms. So
Okay,
I hope
Specifically.
I hope that's not a thing. But I think if we find ourselves saying things like, if I don't do it, it's not going to get done. I have to do everything around here. Or if I don't do that, they won't do it. They won't get it done. If you find yourself saying things like that, feeling that level of stress and responsibility for your family or those people around you, might want to think about it. Is this something in my life? Because codependents are not good at setting boundaries because we're always running into fix. We're always running
And I think one of
rescue.
the other thing is looking at your life, and are you a reactive person? Are a lot of your interactions with people that you love or the situations where you're helping in, is it reacting to something? Are you reactive off of feeling someone's emotions or feelings instead of, I mean, because that ends up at the end of the day draining, right? So we say things like, well, in the sake of love, or because I'm carrying everything here.
Yeah. Codependents are big reactors. They're not processors. They see something, a chaotic situation, they're just going to run in and rescue it and take care of it and control it. Though no one wants to be seen as a controlling person or feel like they're a controlling person, but in a sense, it's really done out of what the codependent views as being helpful, because what they're trying to do is avoid chaos. They think if I control the situation, then I'll be safe, they'll be safe, the kids will be safe, right? If I control this and I make this happen how it should be. But yeah.
Well, one question that comes to mind is we talked a lot about the context of it being around addiction and alcoholism and things like that. But when I hear you explain it, I can't help but see it on a much maybe not as dramatic playing field. Like it's just normal day-to-day life that there are codependents in there, and it doesn't have to be some big, they're addicted to drugs or they're whatever. It could be just normal things that we just view as normal activities in our life.
I appreciate you clarifying that, because it is. It's just dysfunction in the home or things that make people feel scared or not safe. It doesn't have to be, like I said, sometimes there's people in the home that might have mental illness that needs to be cared for. So their emotions are kind of up and down and all over the place. And it's not necessarily meant to hurt anyone,
Yeah.
but it's a situation that in the home, the kids and everyone has to deal with. So they find ways to protect themselves, become codependent. It can just be, just dysfunction in the home. I mean, everybody has a certain amount of dysfunction in their home, right? None of us have perfect homes, but
I also think that this is one where we talked about armchair diagnosing. I think that this is one that a lot of people start to come to because they're researching it. So I don't necessarily if we're talking about like ADHD or bipolar, that to me is a different group of mental illness. But to me, if you're looking up on TikTok codependency, that's a lot of times how people start to say, oh, I can relate to this person, or I start to see patterns. And I think that's a safe one that you could Google or YouTube, maybe somebody that's working through that. Now, the difference between that would be your next step then would be to probably safely process that with a therapist or something else. You kind of need the next level. But I do think that this is one that a lot of people kind of start to discover on their own a little bit.
yeah.
Is codependency considered a one-way street a lot of times, or is it often found that people in relationships are both codependent? Is that common or rare? Or?
Yeah, that's common. Yeah,
Okay.
because addicts definitely have codependent tendencies as well.
Okay, so it could be a married couple and they're both codependent.
Yeah.
That's what's going on.
Yeah. For real.
To me, as you're describing this, and maybe I'm again getting my own diagnosis, but it's hard for me to not see that this isn't a part of everybody's life at some point, like that we're not all at some point codependent and go through these, as a parent, as a student, all of these things I develop, these codependencies on other people or mechanisms or all of that in my life that help me grow, that are part of my discipleship process, that help me learn things that I never did. And, my mood depended on how good my grades were. And so there's a codependency to that and how successful I am. So how do I start to figure out, is this a red flag in my life? Is this just a natural rhythm that happens inside of life? Because I think there's some codependency my kids just have on me that's healthy.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
how do I start to break those codependency ties? It's like, crap, should my kids have no dependency on me? So like, as I'm just like processing that, how do I start to not overdiagnose and be like, oh my gosh, I have a problem. My life is entirely falling apart. My kids are going to make their own meals from now on. Like, how do I start to make that balance from, okay, this is an unhealthy amount to this is normative versus like, can be destructive in my life, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you do what I did. I offered to pay for the counseling, No, I'm just kidding. I think everybody has a certain amount of codependency, right? Traits. I think the word dependency is where we get hooked up.
Okay.
It's okay for your kids and it's necessary for your kids to be dependent on you as parents. They don't have executive functioning skills to know what's best for them. So there's definitely, that's important.
Right. And that's developing a secure attachment for them going forward in their life.
For sure. Where it becomes an unhealthy thing is where we're doing things for them they could and probably should be doing for themselves. They come home, they've got a research paper due. They can't get it done. Are you doing the paper for them?
No, I'm not.
So they get it done?
There you go, Alex.
Right?
Okay, good.
That's
I'm not doing my kids'
codependency.
math right
see?
now.
There you go.
Right. And we have actually recently talked about this where it's more like for their age range, what they should be doing, you should not be doing for them.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, Jessica and I just talked about that a little bit ago.
Because it is a clarifying thing for parents and younger kids versus maybe adults and adult children.
Yeah. Yeah. When your kids are young, they need you to do their laundry. When they're 12 or 13, they know how to turn a washer and a dryer on, right? So there's things that, we try to teach our kids as they get older to take on more and more responsibilities. But yeah, age appropriate. It's unhealthy when we're doing things for another person they can and should be doing for themselves. I guess that's the best way I know how to.
Yeah, that's helpful. And that distinction between dependency is, a helpful one to make because, of course, we all have a dependence at some point on whether it's our job, our families, on somebody else. And so helping make that distinction between, okay, having dependency or having someone depend on you doesn't necessarily mean that long-term that's a codependency. So one question that I'm curious about is I did student ministry for a long time, and we know research tells us adolescence has expanded vastly in the last 100 years. It went from, you're entering adolescence younger because of technology, diet. There's a lot of, reasons that people are entering adolescence younger, puberty, all those kinds of things are happening younger. Yeah. And yet we're coming out of adolescence at an all-time high age, so I think in the early 1900s, adolescence was a period of maybe 5 years where, you got a high school degree or you got into a field of work and then you got married and all of a sudden you're on your own. And now, kids are entering at, I don't know all the latest data, 8, 9 years old, and then it's expanded to like 26 years old.
Yes.
And so this prolonged adolescence of allowing you to be codependent on other people, whether it's living in your parents' house. And there's a lot of factors that go into this.
Right.
Are we seeing like a marriage between the two, the extension of adolescence and more people being codependent on their kids? Or do those things correlate together at all?
I think that's an excellent point. We're enabling, I think, longer. There's reasons kids stay at home. If they're going to college and you're helping them out as parents, giving them a place to stay while they go to school and get things done, as long as they're helping themselves, why not help them? Okay, that's one view. But if we're enabling them to stay adolescents and we're enabling them not to move forward, then again, we are being codependent. We're actually doing more harm to them than we are good.
Yeah, that's good. Because I think of a lot of situations, where I do a lot of marriage, pre-marriage counseling, and, people are like, yeah, my parents got married at 19, but they said I couldn't, even get married till after college because they got married at 19. They had no money. They had no degree. They struggled those first few years, and they didn't want that for me, right? And so they're like, you can't get married. I don't care if you've dated your boyfriend for 6 years. I will say no, that he can't propose to you until you've got your college degree, because I don't want you to have the same struggle your mother and I had, which is a beautiful story. I think that's with a kind heart and great intention, but it seems like that would lead towards a reality of codependency in that kind of scenario. Would that be a codependent kind of reaction? Like, I don't want you to go through the same struggles I had. Yeah. Therefore, I want to set your life up for more success.
Yeah, I think once a person reaches adulthood, it's good to give advice if it's asked, and it's good to, tell them your story, but at the end, they're adults and they've got to make that decision for themselves, right? As parents, we want to support our kids, but it's not our job to tell them what to do. Now, if they're 19, dependent on their parents, they have no job, no money, they want to get married, it might be good to say, have you thought this through? But it's kind of hard to forbid an adult to do something because they are adults.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's helpful.
Well, and a lot of times I'll see that in, we're paying for your school, and it seems like almost this manipulative way of like, well, okay, go try to do it on your own. We saved for your school, but unless you do it the way we want you to do it, then, that check's going to get pulled. You're not going to have the college experience, and so I guess that's more of some of those stories that I've seen, and I'm like, that breaks my heart.
It does. Yeah.
And one thing I think that we haven't talked about is a lot of times, so when how do we identify that we're codependent, right? Because a lot of times it's like, I feel like I'm saving the world or I'm in charge of everything. But then we don't always talk about the feelings to identify it in ourselves, like what comes with that. So a lot of times it's even having low self-worth and how that can affect, and just like the caretaking and thinking and feeling responsible for other people, or even feeling guilty, or what would be another good word? When you hear that one of your people is struggling or maybe made a bad decision, just that feeling of guilt and responsibility that you kind of take on when they're having a feeling. And I think it's different from feeling maybe sympathy or compassion, but it's like, okay, I feel guilty. Now, how do I fix it?
Yeah.
What are some other ones you can think of?
Well, I'll just say this. Melody Beatty, in her book, Codependent No More, has 3 or 4 pages dedicated to
how to identify it.
Yeah, how to identify it in yourself. A lot of times codependents do have low self-esteem just because of, their own circumstances growing up with dysfunction in the home. So they bring that into the relationship. That's part of codependency. You don't care enough about yourself to not hurt yourself at the other person's expense. So yeah.
I think another one is when you feel like, oh, I'm in charge of everyone, and then you get defensive if somebody else says that, or someone else is in that caretaking role and kind of like takes your spot, and you feel like you can feel angry or defensive around something like that.
Yeah, I think codependents will often, they'll do all of these things out of what they feel is love and protection, but then later they resent it and they get angry, and that's when that comes out. Like, if I don't do it, it won't get done. I have to do everything around here. If I don't do it, they won't do it. So yeah, it's you give and give and give and give till you can't give anymore, and then you're angry and you resent it.
Or you're also feeling anxiety, depression. There's usually something else.
Right. And it's that I'm the only one that cares and no one else sees the problem. That comes along with that too.
How do we start to diagnose because you said, obviously, if an emergency comes up, like, we should walk in and, help somebody, and it's okay to rescue a situation, or like, I think of like a Good Samaritan. You see somebody that's obviously broken, a terrible mistake happened, whatever. It's maybe not an addiction or a cycle that's in their life, and you step into that. How do you start to know, okay, I entered that cycle, I helped that person, but then I could see that slowly, the recovery process of that person being slow, and then that codependency starting to happen more and more without somebody even realizing that's happening. So how do I start to realize if I move from genuine, that was good, I was just being the hands and feet of Jesus, to, oh, this is crossing over a line into becoming codependency? Because I assume that's a slow process a lot of times, and so it's hard to draw the line, oh, wait, now this is codependency, not just me helping that person.
Absolutely. And I think when you start to realize that this person is probably being very dependent on you, and you're giving at times when you don't want to or can't, you start seeing those behaviors. It's time to start setting some healthy boundaries around that. And that's something that codependents are not always good at. Because they don't care for themselves. They don't think about themselves and what they need. And so it's good to set healthy boundaries at that time about what your expectations are for that person and for that relationship.
What are those boundaries? Can you just give, like, how do I set boundaries? Like, what does that process start to look like, or what would you say? Or do you need like a scenario to be able to play that out?
Well, if you're talking about are you talking about as a friend or a spouse, or?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess a scenario
might be
helpful.
easier with like a family, maybe a family member.
Yeah. So if you're talking about a wife with a husband who may have an issue, we'll just say issue, and it's negatively affecting your marriage, then it's at that point when you say, okay, I can't tolerate you not being here when you said you were going to be here. I'm counting on you to take care of the kids these nights. And if you're not going to come home and you're going to stay out partying and drinking, then I'm going to get a babysitter. You start figuring out the boundaries, and we're going to have to start paying for that. Okay, that's coming out of the budget. We're going to have to pay for that. Or you may even have to say, maybe this isn't good. Maybe you need to go stay somewhere else until you get some help. It depends on what the issue is, but it's telling that person what it is you need from them, giving them your expectation, making that clear. Well, first identify the problem. Then you make your expectation clear, and then you tell them what you need. Yeah.
Where does guilt come into all of this, and shame? Like, so I would assume, in a lot of situations, that people are able to manipulate, especially if they're the person that's the addict or the whatever, they're able to say, hey, then obviously you don't care about me, or you don't want me around, or even flirt with like threatening their life, threatening a death by suicide or something like that.
Right.
That says, okay, no, okay, you're gonna do that, we'll just get a divorce, like in that kind of scenario. Or obviously you don't care about me, like I need to be out with the guys, and obviously you don't even care about me, like why are we even doing this, my life isn't valuable. How do you start to draw some of those boundaries when manipulation is a big part of it, and that person knows they can manipulate the situation, and you're like, if I set a boundary, maybe their life's on the line.
Right. Oh, that is one of the big ones, Alex. Especially I might kill myself, right? It's the taking on, again, we want to care for that person. We tell them we love them. This is why this boundary's in place. I want you here. I want you with me. I want a healthy family. I want us to have that. You have to want that too. And here's how you can show me you want that. Okay, we don't have to put it up like I'm setting this boundary, and if you cross this line, right? We can put it out there in a loving, healthy way of, this is what I want. Do you want that too? Because if you want that too, here's what I need from you. We can't control if someone goes out and takes their life. We can't control what we say and how we love them. That's the best we can do. Otherwise, I think just setting boundaries around, well, you don't love me. Well, I do love you. That's why I'm setting this boundary. I do care. That's why this has to happen. Are they always going to understand that and take that in? No, probably not.
That's good.
And I think if you explain a boundary as it's not keeping you out, it's a boundary is what I need to stay in a relationship with you, not to be out of relationship with you, but I want to be in your life. I want this to get better.
Yeah.
So if you think about a boundary or even explain it like that, this is what I need for us to be in relationship together.
Yeah. To have what we want. Yeah.
Sometimes I've heard people talk about codependency in a way, almost like a good thing, right? Well, me and my wife are codependent. That's a good thing, right? We depend on each other to make this relationship work, to take care of our kids. Is that a red flag, or is that just a misunderstanding of the term? Is there forms of codependency that are indeed healthy, or is it, when we're talking about the actual clinical term codependency, that is probably a problem that we need to address?
My short answer to that was, at first when I saw that question, was like, no, it's never good.
Yeah.
But I was talking to Jessica before the podcast, and the only time I can see codependency being good is for kids living in toxic homes, because they develop these skills as a way of survival. And they need those skills. So for them, that's good. They found a way to survive. God bless them, right? They figured it out. But when you get older and you get in relationships, not so good, right? And again, I think it's the word dependent that kind of messes with us a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how we address this with someone that maybe doesn't realize it. Because I think there's like very specific people that can maybe speak into that and specific situations. And I can only think of a couple. So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, if it's confronting someone. I mean, I've seen it be successful in a counseling situation where you're able to have like a moderator, someone that's kind of like speaking for everyone and putting maybe more vocabulary into it versus just everyone feeling defensive. But where do you think it falls with maybe confronting someone or even addressing it with someone that you think in your life is codependent? Right?
That's
I know.
a hard one. Yeah. Like your spouse, for instance, right? Yeah, no one likes to hear that. I think you're a codependent. Not even clients like to hear that. But I think probably addressing it more with behaviors that are happening, right? More of, I'm seeing this in our relationship. Just calling out behaviors. We don't have to necessarily put a label on it right away. That's not the important thing. The important thing is, what are the things going on that are harming our relationship or are not healthy? And let's identify those. Labels, if we need them, can come later. I don't know. Maybe you have more thoughts on that.
I also think it's an easy term to throw around just because it's, I don't know.
Yeah.
Different things become kind of fad terms. And so I think when it's confusing we could look at someone and say, oh, well, they're codependent or this, but to really be able to address it, I think you have to be in proximity with that person and to know it's pretty much someone that has a voice in that person's life.
Absolutely.
So if I didn't know you or, and I said, wow, Dianne, you just have codependent tendencies. That wouldn't go over super well.
No, you probably wouldn't be wrong, but it probably wouldn't go over well.
But it's just one of those things where it's like, it's probably a close proximity person or something where it's addressed with
I think
therapists.
To tell people difficult things, we have to earn that right. Right? There's people in my life that are close to me that have earned that right. They definitely have that right. I had a good friend once tell me, Dianne, you're in the way. God's trying to do something. Get out of the way. I valued that from her. I don't know if I would have valued that too much from someone who didn't know me as well, right? I think we have to earn that right. And also, we don't want to give advice that's not asked for, right? If someone's not seeking that from you, it's probably not a good idea to jump in there.
So what are some of the underlying issues that you think lead to codependency that maybe we're not aware of or maybe we don't witness? I guess I'm thinking back to being a kid and, there's several things that and maybe it's just me wrestling with this topic, but like growing up, my mom had arthritis really bad. So it's like a lot of times it was helping where I could, and it's like, did I maybe develop some codependent tendencies there? Or sometimes like, well, when dad comes home, like we should probably make sure everybody's in a good mood, right? That sort of stuff. And like, did I carry that on into my own parenting? But then the other side of it is you look at even the media or fairy tales and it's always you complete me instead of you compliment me or stuff like that, where I think we start to believe that codependency is true love because I couldn't live without you is the language that we speak in rom-coms and things like that. So where do we see the underlying origins of this, and how do we kind of address that?
Yeah, I think those are two good examples you gave of, growing up in a home where you have a parent who's ill or has needs, and you feel like you want to run to the rescue to help them, or maybe you take on that as a child. Not everybody does, but there's situations where some children may do that. Is that a harmful, toxic situation in a home? No, but it is a one that requires, some challenges. So some children might take that on and see that as, oh, I need to care for my parent. I need to be there for them, and they don't take time out to be a child. That can develop codependency. But other children that might grow up in that home and it might be cared for well, and that child may come out with a pretty good attitude about how to care for someone who has needs.
Yeah.
So it's not a given that if you grow up in those situations, you're going to become unhealthily codependent.
What's the process of freedom look like for somebody? Okay, I've identified this, I'm going to counseling or whatever it might be. What's like the hope at the end of the day that somebody feels free, from being codependent on someone else? What's that path look like? And then what does success, I guess, look like for that person?
Yeah. It's a great thing to be free from that. I think it's definitely something that can be healed. It's a learned experience, and it can be unlearned. It can be redeemed. I think counseling helps. I think Jessica would say the same. And you learn to care for yourself. You learn self-worth, self-value. As Christians, we value, too, what God thinks of us, that we are created by Him, unique and special. And so we learn self-worth, self-value. We learn how to set good, healthy boundaries. We learn how to love people well and in a healthy way. We learn how to have good, healthy relationships, how to develop those and how to maintain them. And we learn how not to be caretakers, but to care for people, but not be caretakers. And there's a lot more to that, obviously. I could go on, but...
That's good. It's really good. Well, I think we've kind of come to a close here. Is there anything else that you'd want to add or anything you want to leave people with today?
Sure. I shared this illustration with Jessica and thought, maybe I'd share that with everyone at the end. But something that really kind of, this illustration kind of encompasses what codependency is for me. If you're a client of mine, you've probably heard this, but it's a story of how a butterfly comes to be. And the caterpillar that's crawling on the ground has to build this cocoon. And that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of energy to build that cocoon and a lot of time. And so once he gets the cocoon, he has to stay in there, of course, for a while till he's ready to come out and be a butterfly. Now, the butterfly gets out of that cocoon with the power of its wings. Now, a butterfly's wings are pretty flimsy and thin, but they have to break out of that cocoon. So they work at it and cut at the cocoon, and then their wings get stronger and stronger, and then by the time they get out of the cocoon, they're able to fly. Now, the fun thing I learned about that was if you help the butterfly get out of the cocoon and you cut it to help him get out so he doesn't have to work so hard, he won't be able to fly because his wings don't get strong. And so what codependency does, we're cutting the cocoon we're not helping that person gain their wings and get their strength to fly on their own. We're doing it for them.
Well, that's a great example.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something to think about. Well, thank you, Dianne, for being here
Thanks
and
for having me.
bringing
So
all
good.
your expertise. And, maybe we're all a little more self-diagnosed or not. But we can take the best next step for that, though.
And next time we go to Jess's office for our sessions, we'll wave at you.
I hope you will. I hope you will.
No, but for real, thank you for being here. It's really great.
Thanks.
If you are listening at home and you have any questions or concerns and you'd like to reach out to us, you can always do that through email. You can send us an email at podcast@cccomaha.org. Reach out to us on social media on Instagram or TikTok. That's at CCCOMA podcast. As always, you can leave us a voicemail. That's our new favorite way of communicating with you. You can call 402-885-9930. But until next time, we'll talk to you then.